We'll go ahead and get started, and if more people kind of funnel in, that'll be fine. So we're here today to kind of talk a little bit more about prescribed burn associations, um, with the concept of neighbors helping neighbors. First and foremost, I wanted to thank you all for taking time at the end of your day today to kind of attend this little webinar. Um, this will be the first virtual webinar that I'm hosting, so thank you all for being a part of that. Um, and also forgive me if there's a little bit of technical difficulties of me trying to figure it out. Um, okay. The agenda for today is a brief introduction of our panelists and presenters, followed by a presentation covering the following of like a brief history of fire, benefits of prescribed fire, introduction to PBAs, and PBA foundations and formation. After that, we'll have a presentation by Stacy Lindman, and I see Brent's on from Great Rivers. So we'll have him kind of speak a little bit about the work that Great Rivers is doing in his area, and he'll provide more information about PBAs in general as well. Then we'll have a Q&A wrap-up session. Like I kind of mentioned, there is a virtual sign-in sheet for the PBA. There's a QR code on the screen right here, as well as the link kind of down at the bottom. If you want to type that in, I might be able to put it in the chat as well if folks want to kind of access it that way. Let me see. I might have to share that later. There will also be like a QR code at the end for the same sort of sign in. So if you don't get to it now, you will definitely have time to do it at the end. Moving forward, Stacey, do you want to give a brief introduction of who you are and what you do? Or do you want to wait for your presentation?
I can just wait for the presentation. That's fine.
Okay.
Thanks.
We'll go ahead and move forward then. All right, so a little about me. I'm originally from Michigan, and I am currently the fire coordinator for the southern half of the state. My region is the Red region, and I am based out of St. Louis, which is the Red Star. I started working with Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever in April of 2025 this year, and previously worked with the Nature Conservancy in the greater Chicago area, and then with the U.S. Forest Service. A little bit of what I do is assist PBAs with formation and host events like this where we talk a little bit more so that people can get a better idea of what that kind of means and how to get one started in your area. I also assist partners with burning, provide training and workshops for landowners, and write burn plans and a lot more. Um, just to note as well, on the map, there is a Northern Fire Coordinator, Caleb Worley, who is actually on the call as well. So if you happen to be from that area or any of those counties, he would be the one to reach out to for the same sort of work that I'm doing. All right, moving forward, brief history of fire. Fire is a naturally occurring thing and historically has been used as a tool for land and wildlife management for centuries by indigenous peoples. Even in early settlement days, ranchers and farmers and timbermen learned and recognized that fire was an effective tool management or a management tool. However, in the early 1900s, the US experienced periods of extreme drought, which contributed to large and uncontrolled wildfire events. That effectively led to fear of fire due to its destructive properties on such a large scale. This led to our government taking actions through policy, with the introduction of the 10 a.m. rule, which encouraged suppression of wildfire events in the with the goal of preventing large-scale wildfires. Over time, this led to the introduction of Smokey Bear, and we start to see a slight shift from immediate fire suppression and a small move to encourage fire prevention through education around the 1940s. It wasn't until the 60s or 70s that we started to see a larger shift, especially from our government agencies, reintroducing the narrative that fire is naturally occurring and that isn't excuse me, inherently bad. Today, we are seeing a substantial change surrounding the use of prescribed fire, and we have learned that when fire is managed, it can actually reduce the risk of large wildfires, and we can use it to manage land for wildlife. So why should we burn and the benefits of prescribed fire? It mimics the natural cycle of succession, which ultimately is how the landscape changes over time. Um, at the broad level, the succession cycle starts with disturbances such as prescribed fire or timber harvest, amongst a lot of other things. And once you have that period of disturbance, it helps to kind of reset that cycle, moving from grasslands to shrublands to young forests and then mature forests. The way that we manage a lot of area in Illinois is we're trying to maintain the environment in that early to mid succession cycle, which is grasslands and then shrublands. In certain parts of the state, we definitely want to encourage more of the young and mature forests, but a lot of the work that we do for pheasants and quail happen in that early to mid. It also improves forest and woodland habitat for increased cover, forage, and plant diversity, which in turn promotes wildlife habitat, as I kind of mentioned. And it is a relatively cheap and inexpensive management tool for managing at the smaller levels. Another tool to add to your land management practices on top of mechanical and herbicide spraying. When it comes to burning in Illinois, there's a couple of things that you have to have in order to burn. The main things is that according to the Illinois Prescribed Burn Act, conducting a prescribed burn for ecological management, the Illinois Prescribed Burning Act requires that a certified burn manager be present on site, along with a burn plan that outlines the prescription for the burn and must include a map of the planned burn unit. For Illinois DNR burn plans, those are good for 5 years. NRCS burn plans are good for 3 years, and Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever burn plans are good for 5 years as well. Another step in being able to burn is for Illinois is that you're required to have an EPA permit. The application is free, but the process of submitting and getting your approved EPA permit can take up to 90 days to be returned. So if you're planning for a prescribed burn in your area or on your land, make sure you're planning ahead because it does take a little bit of time to get all of these things submitted, approved, and get back to you. On the side, it does say if landowners burning on their own land, a certified burn boss and burn plan are not required. This is, and there are some exceptions for situations like this, but speaking on behalf of PFQF and promoting safe burning through PBAs, we definitely advocate for and require it at different levels. So while it might not always apply to every situation, it's definitely a good step to take and have a lot of this stuff done. A PBA in general does not burn for hire, but rather assists landowners when burning his or her own property. We generally ask that landowners are on site and are the ones being this burn boss or leading this burn for liability reasons. Oops. And then we also ask that waivers are signed by landowners and crew members to kind of mitigate the risk that there is when conducting prescribed burns. Moving forward, what is a prescribed burn association? As you can kind of see, it's a community-based approach to prescribed fire management. It's a way to organize and connect landowners and encourage them to work together to achieve their land management goals on a collective level. It's a great way to share new methods of land management outside of prescribed fire because you're building this community of, like-minded folks who are trying to care for the land. It's also a way to provide a group to host workshops for landowners and encourage safe practices at the local level. On top of all that, it's a great way to qualify for outside resources and funding opportunities that landowners wouldn't otherwise qualify for due to the scope of the work that you can collectively achieve working as a larger group than at the individual level. All right. Some examples of PBAs in Illinois. We have two main groups of PBAs throughout the state. The two larger ones are Southern Illinois Prescribed Burn Association and Great Rivers Prescribed Burn Association. The main difference with those guys and the smaller landowner groups is that they have a paid fire coordinator that helps them achieve a lot of the administrative tasks and planning and coordinating of what goes into everyday burns and making sure people have their sites prepped and making sure people are sort of paying their dues. They also tend to serve a larger area. SIPA, I believe, services approximately like 12 to 15 different counties, while Great Rivers has, I think, five. And Brent can speak a little bit more about that later on. They also have burn bosses assigned to each of their burns, and three burns, they require that three burns, they require that you participate on three burns in order to qualify for your land to be burnt within the PBA. Another thing to kind of mention is with Southern Illinois Prescribed Burn Association is they've got a board of about 10 folks serving in various leadership roles. They meet about once a month to discuss organization progress and planning. And I want to say they have two or three Illinois certified burn bosses that are compensated for their involvement and the number of burns that they're able to lead throughout the burn season. Some smaller landowner-led PBAs that we have throughout the state is the Marion and Jefferson Prescribed Burn Association, also known as the Burn Guys. They've been operating for about 3 or 4 years now. They hold meetings less frequently, but they do have a coordinated WhatsApp group where they share a lot of their information throughout the year of what's going on, different grants that are being discussed, scheduling meetings, and coordinating burns like the day of. They do host or are trying to host at least one annual recruitment and PBA wide meeting. And they also manage like a group Facebook page to share updates and management information throughout their work area. The county line burn group, I can't give too much information about. I don't think I've met with anyone from that group yet, as I just started in April, but I'm sure they are doing great. Some more examples of landowner PBAs can be seen or found in Missouri. I can't speak directly to how the landowner PBAs are led in Missouri, but I wanted to highlight that they've been sort of paving the way for prescribed burn associations in the Midwest. And the Missouri Prescribed Fire Council has actually been a huge resource to myself when looking to set like a framework for PBAs here in Illinois, in addition to working with some of the directors from the Illinois Prescribed Fire Council and local PBAs like SIPA and GERPA. Missouri has approximately 18 landowner-led PBAs with more in the works. As you can kind of see from the map, all of the colored counties are different PBAs. And then some of the counties with diagonal lines through them are ones that are in the works. I believe the Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever staff and chapters have been a large part in assisting with the organizational aspect of this, as well as they have a lot of support from the Missouri Department of Conservation, which helps them sustain the PBAs with active assistance at the local level, whether it's through funding or technical knowledge. They have seen a lot of success in their projects in the PBA formation process, but I also want to note that their state policies and local resources play a large role in this. So while we strive to reach their success, we can't directly compare or model their methods to what we do here in Illinois, but we can certainly learn from what they do to better the work that we are trying to establish here in Illinois. Moving forward to the functions and purpose of a PBA, ultimately, we're trying to create and give a platform to landowners interested in using prescribed fire and connecting them with those who are already using fire. A lot of the times I'm hearing from landowners is that they are just getting into sort of that land management realm of things and they want to do more fire, but they just don't know where to start. And then on the other hand, I'm hearing from very experienced folks who've been tending to the lands that they've owned for years using prescribed fire for, I think Glenn Savage has been using fire for the past 40 years, but they're getting to the point where they need a little bit more help. And so that is ultimately what we're trying to do with creating more PBAs is connecting sort of those two sides and finding a better way to share some of that knowledge. Um, We are also hearing that a lot of folks want to share and promote the use of prescribed fire to their neighbors and want to assist in teaching them how to care for their land and teach them how to burn safely. So this is a good way to accomplish some of those goals. And on top of that, like I kind of mentioned before, like this is a great way to share the cost of management when it comes to prescribed fire. So a PBA is would be a great opportunity to have shared equipment to split some of those costs and then hold meetings and trainings to teach prescribed fire safety to everyone in sort of that neighborhood, or just kind of talk with the local communities about, hey, this is what we're doing. You're more than welcome to kind of come out to a burn and watch what we're doing, but you don't necessarily have to be a part of the process if that's not what you want. So, basic PBA structure and recommendations. I put this together based off of what I've been hearing from SIPA, GERPA, the burn guys, and also talking with a lot of folks. We recommend that PBA dues have yearly dues membership around $75 to $100, which over the course of a year come out to around $1.44 a week. This money can be utilized in multiple ways, but more often than not, it is used to purchase and maintain equipment. Some PBAs also function with a burn day mobilization fee to where if and when your property gets burned, you are required to pay an additional fee for your burn. I think Brent can speak a little bit more about that and how GERPA operates with their mobilization fee. From my understanding, this money helps pay for fuel and operating costs, but it's kind of up to the PBA if they want to use some of their funds to potentially fund a fire coordinator position or utilize it as an incentive to pay folks who have an Illinois certified burn boss, sorry, who has a certified burn boss qualification to lead some of those burns and compensate them for their time and hopefully incentivize more members to get that certification so that you can get more burns on the ground when there are good burn days. For leadership, we recommend having 5 to 10 people dedicated to helping this PBA function at the administrative level. And we touch on what those basic positions are in the next few slides. Additionally, we find that having a membership hover around 50 to 60 people hits sort of a sweet spot for operating in logistics. It helps provide funding through member dues while also providing a large group of people with varying availability that can help burn days happen. Ideally, we'd like to find this group of people within a smaller radius of about 1 to 2 counties to minimize travel time between meetings and burn days, which might again incentivize more folks to be there when it comes time to burn days and actually show up to meetings. As we all know that this is sort of a volunteer sort of commitment and that everyone has a full-time job generally and kids and families. So we want to make sure we're taking that into account when forming a PBA and the travel time that is required to actually show up and participate. Excuse me. In addition to, or an example of a potential leadership role that could be held by someone within the PBA is an equipment manager who stores and holds on to and just distributes the equipment. Ideally, this would be a person that's centrally located to where the PBA service area is, and we'd like them to basically house a burn trailer that has all of the equipment that you need. So one person from the PBA, if the equipment manager can't be there to actually participate on the day of the burn, someone can kind of pick up this trailer and make stuff happen on the ground. We'd also like for PBAs to hold annual meetings to discuss burn seasons and what and whose units are on the to-do list and what equipment may be needed or maintenance. We ideally would like to see PBAs have an incentive-based structure to encourage members to actively participate in PBA burns. I kind of touched on that with SIPA and GERPA having, I think it was 2 or 3 burn minimum before your units actually get put onto the list. We also advocate for PBAs to have regular email newsletters highlighting burns, member participation, and planned burn days. Um, Obviously, when it comes to actual burn days, it's hard to plan in advance for those unless you have good weather, burn day weather. But just giving people a heads up of, hey, this week, next week looks pretty good for burns. We're looking to burn Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. If you're available, let me know, that sort of thing. Those email chains are also really good for burn day mobilization because it's very important when you're working with a large group of people kind of coming from all over that you're able to share information quickly of where the burn's going to be taking place, you know, the personnel needed and the equipment needed as well. We also recommend that they apply for equipment grants, and I will kind of touch on that a little bit later. And lastly, utilizing PBAs to host their own sort of training days and determining, you know, what are the training needs? Are there a lot of new people who've never done fire before? Do we need to host like a fire workshop where we can kind of go over the methods for prescribed burn? Or are we struggling with, you know, writing burn plans? Is that something that we can host a little workshop and to-dos on how to get that done and do it properly? All right. So again, like I had mentioned, leadership is key for success in a prescribed burn association. The team, like I had mentioned, consists of about 5 to 10 people, with the main leadership roles being president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. In addition, we like to have 3 to 5 board members that serve as committee leaders and assist with planning and coordination of PBAs on the ground. Now, a question that kind of came up from our interest meeting that we hosted on Sunday was, what is the time required for each position? And that is highly dependent on how active the PBA is, as well as the time of year. During the initial stages of a PBA formation, more time is generally required by the leadership team and the board in order to get a PBA's administrative side in place, such as setting dues, forming PBA bylaws, registering the organization as a business with the state, setting up banking accounts, and laying the framework for how the PBA will function at the ground level. Oops, sorry. So kind of touching off of that, if a PBA is something that you're looking to have established as soon as possible, expect to sink like a lot of time and hours into that startup process. But if it's something you're looking to kind of start within the next 6 to 10 months, I think that process can be spread out over a period of time. I estimated the time commitment for each week on average being 2 to 5 hours, but that is during the off season when you're not actively burning. This time is estimated to be used planning workshops, maintenance maintenance on equipment, having your monthly board meeting, and working on grants and other pressing needs that the PBA kind of has set on their to-do list. During the burn season, expect this weekly hour average to be closer to 10 to 15 hours. And that's primarily accounting for 1 to 2 burn days a week, um, but not limited to. There's a lot of prep that goes into making sure all the equipment is in place and the day of burn and sort of the post burn monitoring that is usually required. But with a strong group of leadership on the board and active participation from its members, this time commitment can be managed and shared amongst everyone. And ideally, it will be if you have an active PBA group. And also, again, with sort of the startup and PBA formation process, it is part of my job to assist you all in doing that. So I will do my best to kind of manage some of that initial hours and commitment load as well. So if you're not interested on being necessarily part of the leadership team or part of the board, there are some landowner responsibilities when you are working with the PBA. And the main things here are the first 2 bullet points, and that is having an active PBA membership and making sure that you're paying your membership dues. And then secondly, as I mentioned a couple times already, assisting with burns before the crew assists on yours. Everything else that's kind of listed, such as the burn plans and fire breaks and notifying neighbors, those are all things that should be laid out in your burn plan, especially if you have an NRCS burn plan. Those are very in-depth and go through basically every step that you're supposed to do and everything you're supposed to kind of check off, including, your equipment list or your personnel list. Those are all included in your NRCS burn plans. When it comes to an IDNR burn plan, I haven't necessarily worked with those a ton yet, so I can't speak directly on them at this point. And then on top of that, we just ask that if you're a landowner that's conducting a burn on your property with the PBA, that you provide, drinking water, gas and diesel, and if you have UTVs or additional equipment that might not be part of the PBA, that you provide that as well. So for starting a PBA in your area, as we've mentioned already, leadership is key. We've kind of set the bare minimum for a leadership team to be 5 to 6 interested folks, with 4 of those being that president, the vice president, and treasurer roles, with the rest serving as board members or coordinators of sorts. Um, Again, this helps share the load for the administrative duties amongst the leadership team, so it's not all on one person to manage on top of their home and family life. After that, the next important step is getting the group registered as a business in Illinois, setting up that bank account and applying for a 501c3 status. Ultimately, this will help when it comes to applying for grants, but in order to get this stuff in place, we'd like to have it registered to someone in the organization who plans to stay within that role for a long period of time, and preferably someone who's pretty organized. When it comes to equipment, obviously, a lot of the times PBAs don't necessarily have, that startup equipment readily available to them or the organization. So we ask that we look around to local organizations such as your soil and water conservation districts, Illinois DNR, PFQF chapters, and then NWTF chapters if there are any in your area. That is also something that I'm currently working on too, is identifying different equipment scattered throughout the state within PFQF chapters. But it is a work in progress. So if we're looking to work on a project or a PBA formation in a certain area where I have not started that process, we can definitely start working towards that. Also to kind of know on equipment, if you've got a lot of landowners in your area with equipment that they wouldn't be opposed to, sharing with this PBA or providing it on the day of the burn, whether they're the only ones operating it or if they're okay with loaning it out to folks in the PBA, then that's fantastic. That will significantly help some of those startup costs. But you can't always rely on that. Um, as I kind of mentioned earlier, grants are a huge way for PBAs to acquire and purchase new equipment. There is a NWTF Superfund grant that has an annual application period. The current application period or deadline is August 22nd, and we've got, I believe the burn guys are working towards submitting an application for that. Um, and then lastly, in order to get a PBA started in your area, you have to hold and promote startup meetings, gauge interest in the area, and see who's actually available and willing to put in the time and effort to kind of learn more about this and actually set it into motion. Um, and again, that's where I can come in and help with that. As I kind of mentioned earlier, I hosted an in-person meeting in Montgomery County and had a turnout of around 20 people. And also Stacy and Brent were there to help present and talk with a lot of those folks about the ins and outs of PBAs as well as, their work with the different organizations that they work with. So, as I kind of touched on, my role and the role of the biologist in your area. What I can do is help coordinate and host meetings, trainings, and workshops in your area. I can assist with burn plans. However, I do suggest that if you are enrolled in a state or federal program, to work through your local office and rep first before you come to me. I would love to help, but make sure we're going through those proper channels. And if you have a biologist that you're working with directly, please go to them first and we can kind of trade off workloads there. I can assist with site visits to assess burn needs and pre and post burn checks. I can assist with grant opportunities, whether it's helping you find them, get them, or write them. I will do my best to help in any way that I can. Um, as I kind of mentioned, the burn guys are working on a NWTF grant right now. I've been assisting them in how to assist that. We've also had one of our biologists, Caleb Crawford, helping them write that since he is located in their area. And then lastly, it's part of my job to help PBAs get up off the ground through technical assistance, creating flyers, and doing some of the legwork of getting an event set up and marketing for it. That's what I do. That is a part of what my job is. And I will do my best to help you kind of get the smaller details set into place so you can help me at the local level of promoting such event. Um, in addition to that, I can help with cost analysis of to identify how much money is needed and for what equipment over time once we start getting that process into place. And then lastly, we'll do our wrap up and final thoughts. Fire is a great tool to use in tandem with other management practices and promote wildlife and plant diversity on your property. And PBAs can help you make that happen with shared knowledge and resources at the local level. But in order for that to work, you really have to encourage active participation and have a strong leadership team that can dedicate time and promote the work that you all do to the local community. And I kind of wanted to say that good things do take time, and it might take a little bit of time to get a PBA in your area up off the ground, but consistent effort and management is key. So that's kind of the gist of what I have for PBAs. Feel free to put questions in the chat, which I see, I think Kirsten put in there. And her question was, policies for invasive seed control due to the use of shared equipment across many lands. That is something I hadn't necessarily thought about when it comes to PBAs and the use of shared equipment, but it is definitely very important. And that's something that the PBA board can put policies in place of when you're using equipment or borrowing equipment, that there is policies in place to make sure that equipment's being cleaned between sites, or it could be something where the equipment manager for the PBA is responsible for, either checking that it was done by the folks who use the equipment, or it falls on their plate to kind of clean that equipment between each use. Burn plan must be NRCS or IDNR written, or can a private company write a burn plan that's legally recognized in Illinois? If it's legally recognized in Illinois, I say go for it. However, again, if you are a part of a state or a federal program, you're likely required to have a burn plan written through them. So again, that's something that I can double check on. But I would definitely speak with your local NRCS or DNR office if if you're enrolled in one of those programs. Kirsten, I hope that answers your question. And then that kind of sums up my part of the webinar talking about PBAs and the purpose and how to kind of start it. Ultimately, I go a little bit more in depth with the board and folks who are interested about the ins and outs of how to file for um, a business registration with the state of Illinois, as well as getting that 501c3 status in place. And I have examples of bylaws for PBAs, but I didn't want to add all of that to this presentation at that time because it might put us a little over time. So now we will have Stacy present on her work with NWTF.
Hopefully I can get this to work for. I think you may have to turn yours off first, Shel. It says it's not allowing multiple presenters. I'll try it again now. Is that working?
Yes, I can see
My
your
slides. Okay, perfect. Get the... Okay, so my name is Stacy Lindeman, and I am a forester with the National Wild Turkey Federation. I work out of the Kaskaskia River Basin. My office is the Shelby County NRCS office. That's I'm not in there a whole lot, but that's a main way to get in touch with me is just through the NRCS office there in Shelbyville. So except my burn experience has really been down in the southeast. So I worked down in Georgia for several years where we did large burns. Did a lot of burning down there. Unfortunately, haven't been able to burn as much here. I have helped many landowners, private landowners, friends, those kind of things with burning as much as I can. I love to burn, so I'm pretty excited about trying to get this burn association going. One of the main things that I have when I work with private landowners is that question of how can we get somebody to help us burn, because we don't really know what we're doing. So pretty excited about it, and I want to appreciate Shel having me here, and PF for starting this process. So just to kind of give you a little bit of background about my position and what I do and what NWTF does. So we have a partnership with NRCS. It's very similar to what the Farm Bill biologist with PF has. So there's 3 of us in Illinois. There's myself, like I said, I work in the Kaskaskia River Basin. We have a forester down in the Shawnee Hills. He's been on since about 2019. And then we have also a forester that started just in November up in the Driftless area. So Chase and Connor are both doing the same type of position that I have. This just kind of gives you an area of where we're covering. I cover a good portion of that blue area. There's really nobody in that green area, but I do travel up there to help private landowners as needed. Again, Chase is down in the Shawnee, and then Connor's up in that Driftless area. So what our roles are, so really we just are here to help with Farm Bill programs. So we work with NRCS, they provide our funding, and we work with the Conservation Reserve Program for CRP. So I do a lot of tree plantings. I work with any landowner that has any type of tree planting on their property. The Environmental Quality Incentive Program, so the EQIP program, the Conservation Stewardship Program, and then the Wetland Reserve Program. So that's the basic idea of what we do for NRCS. Since you guys are all here, you probably know a little bit about burning, but just kind of to walk you through just real quickly burning in timber. So a lot of times it's something that isn't discussed as often as the grassland burns are. So really those burns help to enhance that oak regeneration. Without that, the burn in combination with opening the canopy to allow sunlight to the ground, you really aren't going to get that oak regeneration coming in. Oaks and hickories are made to burn. It's what's historically here. So that's really what we want to try to manage for, is to have that oak and hickory regeneration coming in to be able to replace those old oaks and hickories as they die away. Currently, we have a lot of sugar maples, elms, other less desirable species that are coming in as young trees, and going to be what replaces our oaks as they die away over the next 100 years or so. This is also going to help to increase that plant diversity. If you look at that middle picture there, you can kind of see that thick, heavy understory, that herbaceous layer is there. That seed source is already in the ground. It's just waiting to be able to get enough sunlight or to have a fire come through that so that they can actually, come up and actually, produce the seeds and the insects and all that the wildlife need. It's going to improve that forest structure. Again, it's going to take out those less desirable trees, those, the sugar maples, the elms, the ones that we're really not managing for, the ones that are not really in, typically supposed to be in your oak hickory forests. And of course, it's going to support the wildlife. It's going to provide more of a seed source, more acorns, more nuts. It's also going to provide more places for insects to live. A lot of our wildlife live off of those insects. And without that herbaceous layer on the ground, we don't have anywhere for those insects to live. So just to kind of give you just a real brief overview of the benefits. Again, like I said, I work in the timber, so that's kind of what I think about most of the time when I work with the land, is just kind of how to improve that oak hickory forest. So this is really what a lot of my landowners think of when I mention burning in their timber. They envision these these wildfires that are out west, and this isn't even possible here. So what we really find, this is the reality of a timber burn in Illinois. We really want those very low, slow timber burns. You want to burn, back burn against the wind so that it's not coming, you want those flame lengths to be less than a foot tall. You want it to, creep along. You almost want to be bored by the end of your burn. So that's really what we're talking about when we look at this. This is the best way that we can, manage the hickory forest here, is by having these low and slow burns. So really what our NWTF's potential role in the PBA could be that, I can write for prescribed burn plans. I write them for NRCS. I can help you apply for the IEPA permits. Hopefully we can get some of our members involved as well. So we have chapters all through the state. We can get some of them involved in the PBA. And like Shel mentioned, we have what is called the Illinois Superfund. So kind of a brief history of how this works is for NWTF, we have the banquet system, kind of similar to what PF does. But at those banquets, the money that is raised from those banquets, a portion of that goes into a large fund that we call the Illinois Superfund. It is then we have a Superfund board that takes applications, and every year they take those applications and they review those, and they select which members or which applications they're going to fund. They've done a lot of funding of PBAs, both here in Illinois and in Missouri. Currently, we are providing funding. We helped provide funding to purchase the equipment for both SIPA and for the Great Rivers. Like you said, or like Shel mentioned, the burn guys are applying for funding right now. We also provide some support for the burn bosses that are currently, like Brent's position and then the other position down in SIPA. So we provide that funding as well. So again, it's a process that we have to go through. It's an application process, but it's something that NWTF really likes to fund. It works really well. We really agree with the burns. It's a great system, and it's something that I know that I want to support as much as I can in whatever role that's possible. And I know a lot of time our board is kind of that same way. Our Illinois State Board is the same way. They really like to see these connections of landowners working together, and organizations, partnerships with the Pheasants Forever, or in Missouri, like the Missouri MDC. So it really is something that hopefully would work to the benefit of a PBA in Montgomery County, is to have that funding, hopefully. This just kind of gives you a quick look at what we have done recently. So this is a Missouri burn trailer. So this is the Habitat Association. If you're familiar with the Hunting Public podcast, it's a large group that is well known. They got in connection with NWTF, along with Pheasants Forever and MDC, and they created this burn association there as well, the Twin Rivers Burn, or PBA. This is the equipment trailer that they have. I don't know that the Montgomery County equipment trailer would be nice, as fancy looking as this one would be, but anyways, it's more of it's a partnership between several different organizations that come together to provide this equipment, this funding, this the basic things that a PBA would need. So kind of just to give you a quick idea of what could be in those trailers, or what kind of equipment that NWTF would help to partially fund: the backpack blowers, the kestrels, or the wind stations, or the weather stations, different brakes, all these different items that you need. There's a lot more that goes into it than just having one or two little things. It's like, if you want to have all some flappers and all these different things that you want to have, it's going to help to provide that funding. Eventually down the line, you could get into UTVs and some of the more expensive things as well, but really it's just at this point getting started, and that's going to help to provide that funding for you, hopefully. We talk and kind of Pheasants Forever is the same way. We talk a lot about the species that we actually manage for, but when we manage for these species, we're managing for a lot of different types of wildlife. So this is, just kind of a good way to put back into the habitat, and making sure that we have good wildlife habitat in Illinois. And this is a great way to do it. So we are excited about it. I'm very excited about it. I'm hoping I can, like I said, be involved. I'm not sure exactly how I can be involved yet, but we're kind of working on that and seeing what I can do to help everybody out. I'm here if you guys have questions, and if there's anything else I can help with. So that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Like I said or mentioned earlier, if anyone has any questions at any point, feel free to go ahead and put them in the Q&A section. I think I said the chat earlier, but I don't know if you guys have that function. And then we have a little bit of a change up. Brent is not actually on the call, but in his place is Paul Brewer from the Illinois Prescribed Fire Council. He's one of the directors, and I believe lives in Southern Illinois. And if I'm correct, used to work with the DNR. But I'll give him a few minutes to kind of talk on the work that he does, presented as Brent.
Hi, Shel. Thanks. I'm kind of don't really have anything prepared. I don't know exactly how I got switched over as Britt on this call. I got a link to attend, and so here I am as Brent, I guess. But I am Paul Brewer. I was a wildlife biologist with the Department of Natural Resources for about 25 years. I retired as the project manager for the Wild Turkey Project in Illinois. And I had the pleasure of working with Stacy's husband for many years at Lake Shelbyville, a really great guy named Lee Mitchell. I assume you guys are still married. I haven't seen Lee for...
We are. I still claim him.
Yeah, I almost stepped in it there. Council is kind of a clearinghouse for information. We do a fire needs assessment. One of the big things that we've been working on is a fires accomplished map, which if you go to the website, which I put in chat, hopefully everyone, it just says hosts and panelists, not everyone, but hopefully everyone can see that, that link that I put. it'll be under BM for Brent, but it's the link to the Prescribed Fire Council. There's a lot of information there, a lot of resources. Everyone mentioned pretty much that, you know, the habitats in Illinois are very fire dependent. Illinois was a very fire was used widely, you know, before settlement and after settlement in Illinois. Certainly oaks and the oak hickory forest was fire dependent. It's different than it is now. It was much more open, a lot more herbaceous stuff on the ground. And in the last, even in my lifetime, the forests in Illinois have really changed. It's the fancy word for it is messification. Hey, Brent, I see you on there too.
Hey,
I don't know how I became you, but I guess I should be honored to do that. So I'll get off here. Most of the information about, you know, what the Illinois Prescribed Fire Council does is in that link. There's also some links about how to become a prescribed burn manager on there, and also the administrative rules that talk about the burn plans and all that kind of stuff. If you look at that page, the menu is kind of at the top of the page, and you go across and click things, and there'll be drop down menus. The resources part of that is really good. There's a whole ton of resources about fire and some of the prescribed fire science consortia around the country. So with Brent here, I will let Brent take over for himself.
hey guys. Sorry I got on here late. I had a late day. I don't know where we're at because I just got on here. So if there's something you need me to catch you up on, do you want me to just brief on GERPA, or what would you like, Shel?
Yeah, so I basically gave the same presentation that I did on Sunday. Touched a little bit about Great Rivers, but if you wanted to go into a little bit more about how you guys operate and talk a little bit about the mobilization fee, what you guys charge for that and what that covers, that would be great. And yeah, a little bit more about your service area and the reason for kind of separating Montgomery County off and using that as a starting point for PBA formation in my area.
Okay. Yeah, so the Great Rivers Prescribed Burn Association started in 2021, and initially we were trying to cover, it was like 7 or 8 counties. I can't remember. A couple of the counties never took off, didn't get any interest, so we just took those off. Have been serving Madison, Macoupin, Calhoun, Jersey, St. Clair, Montgomery, and considering people from Greene County. And our membership just grew quite a bit. And we're getting to the point to where we have more members than we think we can adequately, or that we're getting more members than we think we could adequately serve. So we're reducing our footprint again to just cover Jersey, Calhoun, Madison, and Macoupin. St. Clair County only had 1 or 2 members. So, you know, although we want to help them, it was less of a concern, where Montgomery County had probably 5 or 6 members, and a pretty good cohort of people that have been burning prior to us even being established. So it just seemed like it made sense to me to work with Shel on getting this off the ground in Montgomery County and try to use that base of people that we already have. And for most of you probably know how we operate. I can't see all the names, but we are $100 a year membership, and then $100 a year membership and $150 the day of your burn. All that money goes to the association and to the general funds bank account. We use that for buying fuel, tools, maintenance, repair, insurance on equipment, things like that. My time has been covered in grants, and all of our equipment has been purchased in grants up to now. I think we operate like most other PBAs that I have heard of, where we are volunteer driven, and most people that are out burning are volunteers. So we ask all of our members to participate on at least one burn the year that they are getting a burn. So one other member's burn. And that helps make sure that everybody has plenty of people come out the day that they're wanting to burn so we can accomplish it. On top of that, they're in charge of putting in their own burn breaks with our guidance, but they are responsible for getting those complete. And they are responsible for being present the day of their burn or assigning somebody, like an immediate family member or a friend or someone else, assign them as a representative of their property the day of the burn. Does that sum it up pretty good? Kind of where we're at?
Yeah, I think that was a good overview and a little bit more in depth of what I was able to kind of speak on for Great Rivers. I think that kind of touches on everything that we had scheduled for the webinar right now. I did kind of just go in and check to see who signed in, and not everyone did. So I will go ahead and share that screen again so that folks can kind of get that link and do that sign in. If you can sign in, it greatly helps us to kind of I can't multitask. Give me a second. It helps us to make sure we're getting metrics for potential grants in the future, as well as grants grants that we currently have. So please fill that out. Give me a second. How do I do this? Share. Okay, so that agenda screen with both the link that you can kind of type into your phone or computer, as well as the QR code for the sign-in sheet, is up on the screen. And other than that, if you have any other questions for the Q&A section, if I can find what screen that went to. I don't know where it went, so someone else might have to answer some questions if they come in. If not, I think we're good to go. Yeah, it's gone.
Hey,
That's
I just want to say that all you guys did a great job, whether I heard you or not.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is thank you to all of you guys for showing up today. Like I said, this is like the first webinar sort of interest meeting that I've hosted, and so it's great. Exciting to see some people on the call and interested. It will also be recorded, which I kind of love and hate. So it will be available to kind of share around once we get it kind of edited and stuff like that. I don't know where that Q&A screen went, so if you have questions, someone's raising their hand. I can't see who. Maybe not. Stacy or Brent, can you guys see the Q&A portion? Has anyone put anything in that?
I just found it, and the only question was from that you've already answered.
Okay, cool. Oh. Well, I guess if no one has any questions, we can wrap it up and you can go about your evening. Thank you all.
Thank you guys. Thank you for having me again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks Stacy and thanks Brent for showing up. And Paul as well.
And Paul?
An unexpected but welcome guest.
Lee will be happy to hear from you, Paul.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And
Thank
have a good
you.
night.
Yeah. Nice. See you guys.
See ya.